guys, it's Rogway here, and today we are looking at how to create photorealistic vector artwork using Adobe Illustrator. I think traditionally people have always thought of Illustrator as kind of a cartoony logo design, font-based program where you can't really make anything super realistic. It seems like everything made in Illustrator ends up being cartoony. But today we're going to look at how we can create gradient meshes. And what gradient meshes will allow us to do is create super photorealistic vector artwork that if they are scaled up to, doesn't matter how big you make them, they're always going to maintain that vector resolution. And so they're going to basically be scaled up indefinitely because they are based on gradient meshes in this case, and actual vector mathematical colors. All right, and you can see that all the examples I'm showing here, they're all vector art, and they look incredibly realistic. All right, way more realistic than just sort of the cartoony, vector art that we're used to seeing. All right, so today we're going to look at how to do that. I'm going to show you, in order to do this, we need to kind of set up our Illustrator a certain way for this to work. And in the tutorial folder, I have a file called Starting Point. We're going to double click that and we're going to open it with Illustrator. You notice this file right now has nothing in it. I've put some white boxes on the edges of the page. It's called border blocks inside layers, just to kind of hide the stuff that's outside of our art space. What we're going to do is we are going to set up Illustrator in a very specific way. And what I recommend doing is going to your window, going to workspace, and just resetting it, depending on what workspace you use, just so you've got everything kind of compact and we can get it as we need it. So I'm going to take Illustrator and I'm going to minimize the window about 3/4 of the screen, like that. I'm going to press Command 0. I'm going to have my canvas on the left. All right, and you'll see that, like I said, I stretched the window that Illustrator's in to about 3/4 of my total size of my screen. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Window, Navigator. And this is not a very commonly used window in Illustrator, but I'm going to open up Navigator. Navigator looks like this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill the majority or the rest of my page with the Navigator. Right? So on the left side, we've got the canvas. On the right side, we got Navigator. This is going to become really important as we get going here. All right, so in my layers, I'm going to go to the background layer, and I'm going to bring in the picture that I want to recreate. All right, so I'm going to actually zoom out a little bit. I'm going to go File, Place. And in that folder, I have an image of a hand. It's called hand.jpg. I'm going to place that. I'm going to click it. It doesn't really matter where. But what I'm going to do with that picture once it's in there is I'm going to hold Shift and scale it up so that just the hand is inside of the canvas. All right, actually just the thumb. All right, now you notice on the left side it shows it properly, it shows it going out of the box, but in the Navigator window it only shows us what's within the canvas. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to lock that. I'm not going to let it move, and I'm going to make a new layer, clicking on the new layer. Oops, I hit it twice by accident, and I'm going to zoom in on the thumb. All right, you'll notice when I zoom in on the left side, it doesn't zoom in on the right side. The Navigator is always kind of a preview of the whole entire thing unless I change my zoom down here. Okay, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by taking my pen tool and I'm going to actually turn off my fill color, just leave it with a black stroke, and I'm going to trace around the outline of the thumb. All right, so I'm just clicking and dragging and just going around the outline of the thumb, like so, until I get all the way around back to where I started. Okay, so I'm going to actually go here, and I'm actually going to go and connect it by going back to where I started. right? So I have a vector object, a vector shape here that's now outlining the thumb. Okay, so that's the first step. Now, if we were doing this traditionally, I might take my eyedropper and pick a color and boom, it's done. But as you can tell, it looks very cartoony. All right, so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to undo that. In this case, what we're going to do is we're going to look at a totally different approach. And it might change the way you kind of work in Illustrator. We're going to take this shape that I created and we're going to go to Object, Create a Gradient Mesh. And I like to turn on the preview so I can see the mesh that it's creating. And it'll ask me how many rows and columns I want to add, but I can always change this after the fact. So for now I might change it to 5 rows just so I got a little more detail. And I'll leave it at 4 columns. The appearance will be flat and everything else is good. We're going to hit OK. Now you'll notice when I did that, it automatically filled it with whatever the sort of default color was. In this case, it was white. And it covered up my original artwork. And this is going to be a problem because if I want to do a gradient mesh effectively, I need to reference those colors that are used in the original. So here's a trick. If you hold Command and you click the eyeball in your layers for that layer, you'll notice that the eye doesn't turn off, but it goes to become a hollow eye. Okay, so it's basically a hollow outline of where the eye used to be. And what it allows us to do is actually see through any objects on that layer. So it's basically putting that layer into outline mode. And the reason that that's super effective, and the reason that we needed to have Navigator off on the right-hand side, is because now what we can do is we can take our direct selection tool and we can click on either the points or the lines within this mesh, and we can start filling in each point with colors from the original work. Now watch how this works. Let's say I start in the sort of top right point. When I click the point, I switch to the eyedropper by pressing I, and I click a color that's close to that point. And I don't know if you saw, but what it did is it added that color to that one point. And as we go along, I'm switching between A, which is the direct selection tool, so A, select the next point, I, click the color, and you'll notice as you start to do it, it starts to fill in that shape with those colors. So it's almost like magic. I press A, I press I press A, and I press I, and I keep doing this for every single point, which might take some time. But what you'll notice on the right-hand side is that this object, this mesh, is starting to fill in with way more realism than just filling it in with either a solid color or a single colored gradient, or sorry, just a 2-color, maybe multiple color gradient. When I hide this now, I've just done the first 2 rows, you'll see that that shape that it's creating, that mesh, has got way more detail. It's got a lot of color points in there. Okay, so I'm going to keep doing this for the entire finger. Now you'll notice in sort of the middle of the finger here, we've got, I believe it's a knuckle, okay, but the kind of the wrinkles of where the knuckle are. And I would say that the one sort of limitation of the mesh tool is that it doesn't handle quick transitions of color very well. All right, but I'm going to show you how to do it in a sec here. We're going to get it all filled in first with all the colors that we need, and then we should be able to fill it in after. All right, if you miss one, looks like I missed one, just go back, do that point again, and it should fill in. There we go. All right. Now I always try to pick a color that's close to that point, but in this case with the nail, well, we don't want to bring in color from the nail yet. We're going to do that separately. So I'm just going a little further away to the skin outside of the nail. All right. Like I said, you can really see it start to take shape pretty quickly here. But we're going to make it look even better very, very shortly here. We're going to make it look even more realistic as we do sort of the fine details. Okay? So something like that. And like I said, it's pretty obvious when you miss a point because they'll either look really bright or, you'll just be able to tell that that part doesn't look right. Okay, so if I turn off the background layer, we now have what looks like sort of a thumb minus a nail. So it looks like a thumb that doesn't have a nail. All right, I think I missed this point. Yeah, I did. Okay, so let's look at how we could create these sort of ridges in the mesh. All right, so here's the trick. First of all, you can use the direct selection tool and you can move these points around. And so usually what I'll do is I'll kind of get the points to match the contour of that finger a little better. So you can see I'm trying to sort of match the angle of that fold in the finger. Whoops. And I'm just doing that by moving the handles and the points to get them to line up a little better. All right? And then what I can do is inside of the gradient tool, hidden inside of the gradient tool, if I click and hold, there's a tool called the mesh tool. Shortcut is U. And what that allows me to do is I can click anywhere on my mesh. And what it'll do is it'll add another row of points. All right, and I can do that as many times as I want. And because the way the gradient mesh is working, it's simply taking this color and blending it to the points that are around it. What I can do if I want a fast transition like this wrinkle in the skin is for this middle row of points, I would fill it in with the dark color. I'll show you how that's going to look in a second. We're going to pick the dark color on purpose. And over on the Navigator side, you can already see it happening. Because it has less distance to blend to, what we get as a result is a line. All right, and that line is going to match the wrinkle pretty nicely. And if we did all three, I'm not going to do that for the tutorial, but just to show you, that's how you do kind of a quick transition. Now, if you have a very defined line, like the nail itself, then what I recommend you do is you look at whatever it is that you're trying to recreate and try to break it into smaller shapes. For example, this nail, it's its own shape. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to consider the finger part done. I'm going to take the pen tool and I'm going to create a separate shape for the fingernail. All right, I'm actually going to trace around the fingernail like so. And I'm going to actually create a separate mesh for the nail itself. Okay, so I've created that. I've traced that object, create gradient mesh. We'll leave it at, well, let's go 4 by 4. I don't think we need that many points. We're going to hit OK. And right away, I'm going to take my direct selection tool. And I'm actually going to move some of these points because I can see there's a sort of a well-defined line sort of between the white and the pink near the end of the nail, and there's also sort of a line here near the cuticle of the fingernail as well. So I can kind of move my points around to kind of match the contour a little bit better. And I can use my mesh tool to add another line of detail at both parts of where that happens. So now it's just a matter again of pressing A and I. A and I. And it does take time. It's not like it's a quick process, but the result is going to be something that's going to look way more realistic than probably any vector art you'll ever get with just using the pen tool and tracing things sort of the traditional way. This is going to give you a much more realistic result. And, people who don't know how to do gradient mesh, they're going to say, how the heck did you do that? How is that even possible with Illustrator? But again, all we're doing is we are referencing colors that we already have, colors that are already in the artwork. And that's what makes it look so believable, is that the colors are based off of the actual photo reference that we're using. Okay, so we can use the same sort of principle for anything. It could be a photograph, it could be a drawing. We could recreate a drawing doing the same thing, and it's going to allow you to get all those subtle sort of hues of color that you can't get any other way. All right, and so we're almost done with the back side of this nail. You'll see how that cuticle is showing up nicely there because of the quick transition between those 2 points. And then we're going to head over here, A and I, just constantly A and I, A and I, A and I, over and over and over again until we get the entire finger nail filled in. All right, so we're almost there. Okay, for this one, because we got a quick transition, we're going to choose the colors on the left side of that transition. That's going to give us a nice transition between the skin and the nail. All right, we're almost there. And now all that we have left are the ones on the outside. So in order to do this, you don't need to know a lot about Illustrator, but you do need to know how to make shapes using the pen tool, because the better your shapes are to begin with, the better the result's going to be at the end. It looks like I got a black point in there somehow. I don't even know how that's possible. Where the heck did that come from? I'm not, oh, there it is, found it. And there we go, okay? So now if I hide my background, you'll notice I've got a pretty realistic looking nail. And that's going to be, like I said, way better than just doing it with shapes in vector. At any point, if you want to see it on the left side, you just hold Command, click the eyeball again. That'll bring it back so you can see all the detail again, and now you can kind of see your final artwork. Anyways, hopefully that allows you guys to make more realistic artwork using Illustrator. Hopefully that's useful and that's something that you guys can apply to your work. Make sure you save your work, and thanks for watching. See you next time.